everybody, welcome to React Native Radio. We have an exciting episode prepared for everyone today. For one, I'll be your host today, Peter Piekarczyk. We have a special panelist, Caleb Meredith, joining us today. We're excited to hear Peggy Rayzis talk about data visualization in React and React Native. Welcome, Peggy.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be on the show.
Super excited to be here.
Yeah, so Peggy, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your background? How'd you get into programming?
Sure. So my story follows a bit of an untraditional path. A little over a year ago, I was working at Macy's corporate in the buying office for bras and panties. So it was really fun, loved the people, but I really wanted more of a technical challenge. So I started teaching myself how to code on the side. I had actually never taken a computer science class before. I was a history major in college, but I picked it up really quickly. And I remember when I was first starting to learn, and I couldn't wait to get home from work and start learning more about programming. And that's really when I decided to make a career out of it. So I attended Grace Hopper Academy in New York City. It's a 3-month programming boot camp. They teach the mean stack there. But while I was at Grace Hopper, I started teaching myself React, and I really fell in love with it, just coming from learning Angular, where you have your own event loop and two-way data binding. I found it much easier to wrap my head around React. So fast forward then to hiring day, where I connected with Major League Soccer. I ended up joining the team there, and now here I am talking to you all on React Native Radio.
That's pretty awesome. So how long total from, starting to learn how to code to now?
So I started teaching myself how to code January of last year. So it's been about a year and a half now. So so the progression has been obviously really quick. I started working at Major League Soccer in September, and then, I was speaking at ReactConf in March. So not a lot of time, but I think the cool thing about React and React Native is that the technologies are so new. And as long as you really have a mastery of like JavaScript fundamentals and start getting into functional programming, it's really easy to pick up. And I don't think not knowing it and not knowing programming for years and years hasn't really been a hindrance on my development,
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So did you start with JavaScript or did you dive straight into React?
So I actually first, when I was teaching myself, I started teaching myself how to program in Ruby. So I was doing like Code Academy online tutorials, and then I got into Grace Hopper, and I literally had like a week to convert everything I learned in Ruby into JavaScript before the boot camp started. So it was kind of crazy. And then, then they kind of started with their 4-week online program where I was really like solidifying JavaScript fundamentals. And then, ever since then, I've been, programming in JavaScript, also diving a little bit into Objective-C, Swift, and Java, obviously with React Native development and bridging. But it's been a really fun ride so far.
I'm sure many React Native developers haven't even started looking at the Java and Objective-C part.
I'm one of those people.
Yeah, for sure. Same.
So Peggy, tell us a little bit about what you do now at the MLS.
Sure. So I'm on the UI team at MLS. So what that means is I work on anything user facing. So that includes our real-time match experience on the web. It also includes our Fire TV app, which are both written in React. Something really exciting that we're doing this year is we're bringing our mobile app in-house, and we're rewriting it completely in React Native. So it's going to be a greenfield app. So that's also been a really huge focus for me this year. We're a really small team at MLS. It's only me and one other person, although we're looking for a third right now. So it's definitely a challenge, but also really fun because we get to work on such a wide variety of projects.
So is it just 2 people for across the web, across native, across the entire stack?
Yes. Yeah. Wow. So it's me and then our tech lead, Kurt, which has actually, it sounds like it's a lot of work and is really difficult, but it's been a really great benefit for me because I get a lot of one-on-one mentorship and pair programming. So it's allowed me to ramp up really quickly and just kind of get my feet wet in a variety of different areas.
Who else is on the UI team? Product managers, designers?
Yeah, so we have product managers and designers that kind of span all the teams. We have 2 designers that we just hired, which is really exciting because before we didn't have them, and Kurt and I were kind of playing the role of like designer and developer. So that's been awesome. We have some folks that do like testing and stuff. So yeah, it's a really, really small team. We have a lot on our plates, but we somehow managed to get it all done.
I guess one more culture question. Is there like an office soccer league?
There is not an office soccer league, thank God, because I am not very good at soccer. But everyone there is really passionate about the game. Before I started, I hadn't really been in too much to MLS, but since I've joined there, it's been a lot of fun learning about soccer. I got to go to one of the playoff games last year, which was really fun. It's just such an awesome community, and the fans are really passionate about the game.
Do you and Kurt have different teams that you both like?
No, so we're both from this area, and we're both Red Bulls fans, so no clashes there.
Is that a problem in the office in general?
Not really. I mean, sometimes...
well, I wouldn't say problem.
Yeah, no, not a problem. More like sometimes people trash talk a little bit on Slack, when 2 teams are playing each other. But everyone, kind of keeps it tame, kind of keeps it under control.
Yeah, that's a pretty exciting way to build culture.
Do you all have some crazy Slack plugins for game highlights or GIFs? Do you have your own
when there are scores?
Yeah, or even like a success GIF, just a whole bunch of just different soccer ones that people don't usually.
I wish we had the time to build those. Those actually sound like really great ideas. I feel like we're so busy with everything else that we haven't had the time to do fun Slack plugins like that. We have some other Slack plugins for DevOps stuff, which are really cool, but no crazy GIF plugins. I'll definitely have to tell that idea to the team.
So let's get into data visualization. Peggy, can you tell us a little bit about what data visualization is and how it sort of relates to what you're doing at MLS?
Sure. So the way I see data visualization is kind of presenting data in an appealing way to your users so that they can really understand, and how the data tells a story and communicates a message to your users. So I've been working a lot with data visualization at MLS, just because as we've started to kind of rethink our mobile app and data visualization in general, how we want to communicate a message to our fans. So I've really been focusing on this area, and I also gave a talk about it at ReactConf on cross-platform data visualizations and how to maximize code reuse between the web and native.
Mm-hmm. So what do you use, as the implementation? Are you using any libraries for data visualization in the MLS app?
Sure. So as we started building our React Native prototype last year and started to rethink data visualization, we started thinking about our requirements and what we would want in a library. So we definitely wanted it to be customizable because we have a lot of different stats, right? We have player stats, we have ball positioning stats, we have possession stats, and we have to be able to display a wide variety of charts. We need to be able to theme them out according to team colors. So we really need to make it our own. We also needed animations and a robust animation system to be able to connect different charts and make them dynamic. And ideally, we wanted to make it cross-platform as well, obviously, because our team is so small. So any amount of code reuse we can get is crucial. So originally, we thought about using D3. And D3 is very powerful, but have you guys ever worked with D3 and React before?
Yeah, a little bit. Mostly maintenance on some work some other people did.
Yeah, what was your impression of it? Did you find it a little bit difficult?
So I feel like if maybe I had started working on the code, I might, kind of nerd out and be like, oh, math and curves and stuff. But definitely coming into a project that wasn't well documented and built by someone else, it was very confusing for sure.
Yeah, so we kind of found it confusing as well, right? Because D3 is a little bit difficult to integrate with React because of how it binds data to the DOM. So you really have like two options when you're working with it. You can create a ref and then let D3 manipulate the DOM itself in component did mount, and then prevent like re-renders from occurring. So that's not really a great option just because it takes away control from React. So your other option is then kind of to integrate all the different D3 packages. So you have like D3 shape, D3 scale, anywhere from like 3 to 5 or more of these packages to render one chart. And obviously, like this requires a huge level of expertise in D3. It takes a lot of time, and it's not really flexible if business requirements change because, say you spent hours configuring these packages to make a pie chart and then your product manager wants a bar chart, well, then you're going to have to rewrite the whole thing. So with all of that in mind, we started looking at different options, and the one that we ended up choosing was Victory by Formidable Labs. Have you guys worked with Victory before?
Nope. Love to hear more.
I haven't.
So Victory is awesome. It's a library of composable chart React components, and it actually uses D3 underneath the hood. So it includes everything from Voronoi diagrams to area charts. It also does your basic bar charts, line charts, and pie charts. And what's really cool about Victory is it's super composable. So you can combine chart components within a chart wrapper to truly make it your own. So you can have, you can combine the different types of charts depending on your needs. And everything can also be swapped out with your own custom components. So say you wanted to, have one of the examples in the docs, they have a scatter plot with like emojis as the points. So you can swap out the different data components and really make them your own.
Why was a cross-platform charting framework important to you?
Sure. So cross-platform is really important to us because we are a super small team. And obviously we have a lot on our plates. We are, writing our Greenfield React Native app. And then we're also reconfiguring our real-time match experience on the web as well. So we really needed something that was going to work in both places. And as we were evaluating other libraries, we also came across another really great one by Uber. It's called React Viz. And it's really good if you need some like advanced, like data science-y kind of charts. They do like tree maps and sunbursts. And it's kind of a somewhat similar API to Victory, but it's not cross-platform. So that was really important to us in order to achieve maximum code reuse and to avoid duplication in the future.
How does Victory do animation, especially like cross-platform animation, right? Because there's 50 different ways to do animation. You can use animated or React Motion, or so. How does Victory enable you to do cross-platform animations?
Yeah, so this is actually one of my favorite features of Victory, is that the animations are completely cross-platform because instead of being tied to a specific API, whether it's CSS animations or animated in React Native, it uses D3 interpolate. So you're able to pass a render callback to Victory animation and then pass your tweened props into the component. And what's really cool about that is the component doesn't have to be a Victory chart. In my React Comp talk, I actually did like a demo of a radial bar chart where I was animating a soccer ball as the data changed. So it doesn't have to be a Victory component. You can use Victory animation with anything, which is really, really cool. It's super powerful. It has a bunch of different easing functions. So it's very customizable as well.
Given that it's written in pure JavaScript, were there any performance implications that you faced during the implementation process?
To be honest, I don't think we have stretched Victory to its limits yet in terms of like requiring enough data points to see a performance downgrade. We haven't really gotten there yet, so I couldn't say. It's been extremely performant for us so far. But I know there has been a lot of work done in React Native Animated to move some of those animations over to the native thread. So I'm not sure if Victory is taking advantage of that yet, but it's been extremely performant for us so far.
Do you know if it uses set state under the hood, of course, with D3 interpolate, but then it's actually updating values with set state, or is it directly mutating DOM or native nodes?
Honestly, I think it uses set state for most of its stuff. The code base is very large. It's split up into a bunch of different submodules. You have like Victory core, which contains a lot of helper functions and kind of more of like the D3 logic and like util functions. And then you have the charts themselves, and they all kind of draw upon these functions. So there's a lot going on. I don't think it's like directly one or the other. But I don't think it's mutating the DOM with D3 so much as like using set state and React to power the different data transitions.
Would you use Victory for anything besides like data visualization too, or is it strictly data visualization?
What do you mean by like anything outside, like other, like the Victory animation API?
Yeah, just the animation API.
So I actually haven't experimented with that just yet, but I know, have you guys used Spectacle before?
That's the slide thing. I've not used it, but I've definitely seen a lot of talks using Spectacle.
Yeah, so that's also by Formidable Labs, and I believe their slide transitions use Victory animation underneath the hood.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was kind of knee deep in that when I was doing my React Comp talk, because it was my first time using Spectacle, and I remember digging in the source code and seeing it. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. So yeah, I think they're using it. But yeah, if I needed cross-platform animations, I would definitely be open to trying it in something other than a data visualization project.
I knew that question was going to have some merit. So is there anything else that you've been working on with Victory, whether it's at work or outside of work?
Yeah, definitely. So I made some demos for React Conf. I had the radial bar chart there. That was really fun and exciting, but very soon, I haven't started working on it yet because we haven't nailed down the design 100%. We are building a progressive web app for our real-time match experience. And we're really bringing data visualization to the forefront of like the story of a live match. So it's going to be right there on our match tiles as the game is going on. So we want the chart to dynamically redraw as the game progresses. So right now we're thinking maybe a possession line chart, but this could change. So I'm really excited about that. I think that's going to be really fun and exciting. We have like little soccer balls as like data points. So we'll get to do some like fun custom components there. And then it also has, you know, at different breakpoints in the game when yellow cards or red cards are given out. We also like have those as like custom labels. So that'll be really fun. Another thing I really want to start experimenting in with Victory, they recently added some really cool brush and zoom containers. So what that means is you have your chart, say it's like a line chart over time, and then they have containers that add a mini map of your chart to the bottom. So you can isolate a specific period of time that you want to see displayed on your chart, and then that'll sync up with the chart above. So I think this could have really cool implications for showing data over a large period of time. Like say we wanted to map out wins for all the teams in the league for the entire season. We could then like have the mini map underneath and give the user flexibility to like isolate. Maybe they want to see a month's worth of data, or maybe just like the period before playoffs to get a certain picture of what's going on. So I definitely want to experiment with that as well. It just seems really interesting, and I think it'll be really effective once we start working on the match detail pages.
How do you decide what charts are best for your users, right? What charts your users want to see?
Yeah, so we actually don't have any data scientists on our team. We are more like data visualization enthusiasts. So now, now that we have the designers and UI experts on our team, they're kind of doing user research and just seeing what would fit best. So we're actually having some meetings this week to kind of talk over what that's going to look like. But yeah, obviously just some trial and error and, seeing what resonates really with the fans.
Are these all going to be public tools, or are these websites going to be behind like a paywall?
No, so I think they're actually going to be public. So this is part of our real-time match experience. If you go on the MLS soccer website right now and click on Match Center, that's really what it's going to be replacing. So it's just a new way to kind of think of it. We've seen some really interesting stuff in sports in general happening with like stats and open databases. Like, I don't know, do you guys follow the NBA at all?
No.
So they it's okay. Don't worry about it.
What a great sports podcast, right?
if you go to stats.nba.com, they just released like open stats website. And they don't have like visualizations, but it's all really in chart format. And it's just like endless amounts of stats. And it's really cool. So we've been looking at that and kind of thinking, long term, what we want to do with our stats, if we want to open it up. But, that's definitely a down the road discussion. We don't have that all ironed out just yet.
So what does the real-time stack look like? And what will that real-time look like when moved into React Native?
Yeah, sure. So we're working on that now. That is our progressive web app built with React. We've actually been trying something really exciting. And I don't want to give away my pick just yet, but it looks like I'm going to have to, is React Native Web. So obviously we're a really small team. We tried to squeeze every ounce of code reuse that we can out of our components. So we've been writing our progressive web app with React Native Web. So we're building with that on the front end. And then on the back end, we have a GraphQL layer over our API, and we've been using Apollo to manage data fetching, which has been really, really exciting.
All right. So now I have to ask you a bunch of questions about GraphQL. So are you using subscriptions in your GraphQL API?
No, we are not using subscriptions. We're just going to poll at certain intervals because we really track it by minute. Like every minute is kind of when the UI is going to update. So we're just going to poll every minute and see how it goes. Maybe if we find out that isn't working, maybe we will move to more of a subscription-based model. We haven't looked into subscriptions too much yet, but yeah, I think the polling will cover our use cases for now.
How did your team make the decision to use GraphQL?
So we started doing, obviously we were using Redux to manage a lot of our data fetching, and it was just getting really complicated because we have, a lot of data that goes into a match. We have, the team data, we have player data, we have statistics data, and really we were like the ideal use case for using a GraphQL client because we have all these components and they're getting fed with a bunch of data. But what if we just let the components that handle that type of data just fetch it themselves? So that's really what prompted us to look into Apollo, and the integration was super easy. We were able to remove like thousands of lines of code from our Redux code base. Because Apollo uses Redux under the hood, so they take care of all of that for you. So it's been really great so far, and just really easy. We've had amazing success with it.
How strictly typed is some of your soccer data? Is your GraphQL schema like types for everything all the way down, or do you have some types that are just arbitrary JSON objects?
So we haven't typed like all the super detailed statistics all the way down because we first started integrating GraphQL into our like scores and schedule page. So that's very general. That doesn't go into match detail. So then once we start getting into the match detail and like the sub tabs of that and the heavy stats tabs, we're going to probably eventually have to type it. But it hasn't been so bad because we use Flow. So we've been able to carry over a lot of what we previously had in Flow into our GraphQL schemas.
Yeah. And I guess my last question on GraphQL is, and I like asking this to a lot of people, how do you explain the benefits of GraphQL to someone who is unfamiliar with GraphQL, unfamiliar with REST? I've found that a very tricky problem because GraphQL solves a very niche set of problems that's kind of hard to describe. So how do you explain it?
Yeah, definitely. So that's a tough question, especially if you're explaining it to someone that's unfamiliar with REST. Obviously, there's different trade-offs with everything. People have said that GraphQL, can be hard with caching. I've just found it really great, especially using Apollo because it handles the data fetching logic for you. You don't have to write it yourself. You don't have to maintain it yourself. And then obviously the benefit is that you can just let your components request the data that they need. It's very declarative and, you're kind of requesting what you want as opposed to getting all the data and then filtering it down on the client and then distributing it to your React components where you need it. Mm-hmm. So, Yeah, I don't know. To that answer the question, I probably didn't explain it as like granular as I should have.
Yeah,
But
no, that's fine.
that's kind of how we see it.
Yeah, I like explaining it from a front-end developer perspective too. Yeah, when I heard GraphQL, I had to just ask a couple questions because I do a lot of contract work around GraphQL, and I did a bit of contract work for Apollo too. So had to ask some questions.
Oh, that's awesome. So you've actually
Yeah.
contributed to Apollo itself?
Yep, the Apollo client, yeah.
Awesome. Well, excellent work. We are loving it so far.
So when you say code reuse, do you plan on doing any reuse between the web and React Native, or are you going to keep separate code bases for them?
Yeah, so right now we are keeping the applications in separate repositories just because we plan on using the React Native packager. But we've been really excited about the developments with Hall by CallStack. Have you guys heard of Hall?
We actually just interviewed them a few episodes ago.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, Hall is really exciting because it uses Webpack to package your React Native application. So you could keep your web app and your React Native app in the same repository. So we're definitely tracking that and tracking the progress of that. But for right now, what we're doing is we are using React Storybook to develop our shared components in isolation with React Native Web. So that's really like all our pure components, the ones that don't talk to GraphQL, kind of more presentational stuff. So then once we're done with that, we have that in a Lerna mono repo with our like our common Redux actions. And then we're probably going to add some more stuff to that as well. But once we're done, then we're going to import those into the repository for our web application and then the React Native application as well. So I'm really excited to see like exactly how much code reuse we get out of that. It'll be interesting to like crunch the numbers, but it's looking like it'll be a lot so far. We've really been happy with React Native Web and how it's allowed us to, develop these shared components really quickly. And I think they'll look great on native as well.
I don't want to step too much on your pick, which you mentioned is React Native Web off air. But do you think that we might in the future see some of the stuff from React Native Web or React Primitives by Leland Richardson exported directly from React?
I don't know. I would love to like pick the React team's brains about that. Just because I think it's such, we've been hearing so much buzz in the community about it, whether, it's React Primitives with the Airbnb team or React XP. And what's really interesting is like for React VR, it draws upon the same React Native primitives and then even React Sketch app as well. So technically, like you could write one component. Granted, it'd obviously have to be pretty basic with like views and text and images and render it on the web, iOS, Android, VR, and Sketch with like the same component. So I think the idea is starting to get some traction. So it'll be interesting to hear if it's ever formally integrated in React. I know I would love to see it.
Yeah, I'm very interested in this story as React as, the cross-platform view rendering library. Do you think this is something I also enjoy speculating. Do you think that one day Create React App will use React Native build tooling instead of Webpack?
Interesting. I'm not sure. I haven't like done too much with Create React App just because we kind of have our own custom setup. But yeah, that would be interesting to see just because, all the other ones kind of rely upon their own packager. It would be cool to see if they end up like open sourcing that just so we can kind of, because to me, I feel like the packager sometimes seems a bit of a mystery. So it would be cool to just kind of dig in deeper with that.
I'm sure it's just a matter of time. Well, and especially too, like now with like Create React App and where things are going, I feel like we're sort of removing ourselves from the foundation and letting people who love do tooling focus on the tooling and letting people that love building apps build apps and not have a lot of cross contamination there.
Yeah. And I guess my last like speculative question, given that Facebook has a lot of developer mindshare with React, do you think it makes sense for them to build a React native Facebook phone?
A React native Facebook phone?
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I've never thought of that before.
Yeah. Because, you could think about it where, and I think Christopher Shadow has talked about this, where you have the React reconciler, but it's operating directly on, super primitive, super low level operations instead of the DOM or iOS or Android views.
Yeah, I would love to see that and experiment with that. I'm an iPhone user, and recently I've kind of been like, oh, I want to switch to Android, but like I'm not ready to make the switch. But I don't know. That might be the one thing to make me switch from my iPhone.
Yeah. Yeah, credit to Jeff Meyerson with that idea. Talk to him more if you're interested.
Yeah, definitely. You'll have to give me his name after the show.
Yeah.
All right. Now we're going to get into the picks. Peggy, do you have any picks?
Sure. So I have 2 picks today. I kind of gave you a little bit of a preview of my first pick, which is React Native Web. We've been using it at Major League Soccer to power our new progressive web app. And we've really been loving the dev experience so far. What's really cool about React Native Web is it uses all the same primitives as React Native, so you can develop truly cross-platform components. And it also has a shim for things like native modules, so you can use certain libraries like React Native vector icons on the web, which is really cool. My second pick is a book, actually. It's SVG Animations by Sarah Drasner. So I'm only 2 chapters deep so far, so I don't know if it's a little bit preemptive to make it my pick, but I'm really loving it so far. It's really informative. There's tons of interactive CodePen examples throughout the book that you can play with yourself. And towards the end, I think there's even a chapter on how to execute SVG animations and make them perform in React. So I'm really excited to keep reading that. It's been awesome so far. And she breaks down everything really well. So I highly recommend that you all check it out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Caleb, do you have any picks?
Yeah, I've got 2. So at the risk of being super cliche, I picked podcasts. I'm very bullish on podcasts. I think podcasts are an amazing medium for consumption and production. It's super easy to sit down and produce a podcast and get your voice heard. And it's one of the best mediums for learning and staying up to date with news and stuff. So I'm super bullish on podcasts. If by chance you're not a podcast power listener and you're listening to this, then you should definitely listen to more podcasts. And my second pick is a book that is especially interesting to read if you're part of the startup tech growth landscape scene. Throwing Rocks at the Google Bus by Douglas Rushkoff. It's a very interesting read. He very much criticizes the growth mindset that a lot of Silicon Valley holds by looking at some of these people who are very angry at Google and Facebook and San Francisco and throwing rocks at the employees while they're trying to get to work. So it's a very different read from what you hear a lot of times in Silicon Valley, and I definitely recommend that.
Awesome.
And I guess going off the podcast pick, audiobooks are also pretty great. So if you want to listen to that in audiobook form.
I've actually never listened to an audiobook, but I might give it a shot for this. I actually just pulled it up on Amazon.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know why, but I just stopped reading a long time ago, and that was really sad for me because I used to love reading, and then I started getting audiobooks, and it's great. And the best part is you don't have to be a trained speed reader to read one of these things, and really quickly just pump up the speed to 1.5x, and there you go.
Do you find that you retain the information better when you're listening to an audiobook versus a paper book?
Well, so that's a good question. So I think, unfortunately, at the moment, I think the answer might be no, because often, I'm not saying that's because audio as a format is inferior to words, but a lot of the time when I'm listening to an audiobook, I'll also be doing something else. Like I'll be driving or doing the dishes. So by that fact, I am a little distracted when I listen, but I definitely get all the core information, and I have it there on my app to re-listen whenever I want.
I watch a lot of tech talks at 1.5 or like egghead videos. Yeah. And I don't mind that. I just feel like I'm consuming the information at the right speed.
Yeah. I definitely love the speed up feature in podcasts and audio.
So my pick for the week is an article by Jake Archibald called Combining Fonts. So if you've ever wanted to use like one font with another, or like, something about one font kind of sucks, well, there's this Unicode range property that you can use at font face. And Jake Archibald basically goes through and teaches you how to use it properly, and a few other goodies in there too. It's a great read.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I'll have to check that out. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, that concludes React Native Radio. Thanks so much, Peggy and Caleb, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. This was so much fun. It was awesome talking to you both, Caleb and Peter.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.